So today we're making what I think is my favorite hors d'oeuvre ever. They're Gougères. They're little French-inspired cheese puffs. They're absolutely delicious and they're wonderful with a glass of champagne. The problem with them is that they're best eaten warm, and I don't know about you, but the last thing I need when I'm having a dinner party is a baking project at the last minute. So I'm going to show you how to make these, but how to do 90% of the work in advance so that when people come, you just pop them in the oven and go. Cheers. So the dough has very few simple ingredients, but the main event is cheese. You can use lots of different kinds of cheese here, but it's important that the cheese is aged. You want a cheese that's fairly dry, like Gruyere. This is Comté. I also use at least 1/3 of Parmesan because it gives it a nice flavor and a nice crisp texture that I really like. So let's grate our cheese. We need 3 ounces. I use the smaller part of the grater because you don't want big pieces of cheese in the cheese puffs because they'll tend to weigh them down. And it's important to measure this carefully. There we go. There's 2 ounces and we'll make up the difference with Parmesan to 3. Perfect. Now to our batter. We take 1/2 cup of milk and water. We'll put it in a small saucepan. 2 tablespoons of butter. It can be salted or unsalted, it doesn't really matter. And we're going to heat that just until the butter is melted. There's no need to bring it to the boil. Okay, that butter is melted and we're going to turn off the heat. Then I'm going to add just 1/4 teaspoon of salt, several grinds of black pepper. I like them nice and peppery. You can also use cayenne pepper if you like. And then 1/2 cup of flour. And just dump that in all at once and then stir it vigorously until it comes together in a ball and it pulls away from the sides of the pan. And then when that's done, leave the dough to rest for 2 minutes because we're going to add eggs and we don't want to cook the eggs. One at a time. So here's 1 egg. And then stir it vigorously. It's a little gloppy at first and it'll separate, but don't worry about it. It'll come back together. Just keep stirring. But make sure that each egg is fully incorporated before you add the next one. And then we'll add our second egg. And stir some more. There we go, that's the consistency we want. You want a sticky, smooth paste. So now we add about 3/4 of our cheese mixture. We want to save the rest to sprinkle on the top. Just put that in, and then stir it again just to mix it in. So now we're going to make balls out of our cheese dough. There are a couple of ways you can do this. You can just spoon this onto a baking sheet. I have this lined with a Silpat, or you can use parchment paper with a little teaspoon like you would cookie dough, or you can pipe it with a pastry bag, which is much faster. This is a good investment. It's just a few dollars and it saves a lot of time. So you want to make little balls about the size of a cherry tomato. If you're going to bake them right away, you should have them about 1.5 inches apart, but if you're going to freeze them, it doesn't really matter. There we go. Now for the cheese. And you kind of need to push this in a bit or it won't stick, although don't flatten them. If you push too much cheese in them, you weigh them down and they won't puff. Okay, there we go. Now, if we were baking these right now, they'd go into a 425-degree oven for about 10 minutes. We're going to freeze them for later. So we'll pop them in the freezer. And I have a sheet of them that I've been freezing. So instead of storing these on a baking sheet in the freezer for a long time, which takes up a lot of space, this is what you can do. Take a Ziploc bag, just take them off and put them in there. In the freezer, these will keep for months. So there we go, back in the freezer for whenever we want them. So this is something I would do just as people arrive. The baking time is short, 10 minutes or so. So if you set them out just as the first guests come through the door, there'll be the wonderful aroma of cooking cheese. And then as soon as people are settled with a cocktail, you can pull out a tray of warm Gougères. It's perfect. And it'll look like you went to a lot of effort. And the best thing to eat with Gougères, champagne. Cheers.